Hello, everyone. If we could ask people to start to take a seat, grab a drink, whatever you want. We're in the middle. Watch your step here. Oh, you got a nice target here.
I'm always ready. I know. I listen, and then I can figure out how can I ask myself, what can I uniquely say that will make a difference? And that's how I ask myself the question. So I have no idea what I'm going to say.
That's what I.
Yes, you too. That's a good thing to do. I find sometimes if I write a paper, then everyone else has already told the story.
Happy birthday, fellow.
And then, yeah.
Okay, if people could start to take a seat. We've got a exciting full agenda here, and we also have piano night coming up afterwards. And I know some people want to sing. We've got birthdays and the whole bit, but all right. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Gelster. I'm the founder of Freeland. I'm also a member of the board of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. And I want to welcome you to today's event. There's actually two events that link up. You might still be wondering, some of you, what's the connection between Jane Seymour, Freeland, Foreign Correspondents Club, this upcoming film fest, and pandemics. You'll find out what the connection is over the course of this event. But let's start with Jane and then end with her talking to us today before we open up an extraordinary photo exhibit by Katie Flynn, followed by some music and some birthdays. So stick around if you can. So Jane Seymour, who is a OBE, Officer of the Order of the British Empire, one of the most popular celebrities of all time. She is a multiple Emmy and Golden Globe winner. She's one of the original Bond girls. She's had many roles. Some of her know her as Dr. Quinn because that played so all over the world. In fact, it's still playing, I guess, in 92 countries. So she's got quite a following, but she's had roles in all kinds of films in different languages. And she's now still on Netflix, The Kominsky Method, making more movies and TV series apparently now at the age of 70 than she ever has before. So she's also a film producer. Some of you saw the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash. She's done other ones, award-winning ones. And she's also, though, a philanthropist and an activist. Jane has her own foundation, which is called the Open Hearts Foundation, which I'll let her speak to, but suffice to say, while the press has been busy covering how great she still looks in a swimsuit down in Phuket last week, she's been very busy also helping animals, people, and nature. So Freeland, as a counter-trafficking organization, needs influencers and communicators like Jane to help us reach more of the public in an effective way. Jane is popular, and she's a pro at communication, and I'm happy to say, and I've gotten to know her better over the last few years, she really walks the talk, including with our global campaign, teamed up with other organizations called End Pandemics. The whole COVID discussion, it's been dominated by scientists and politicians. So that sometimes leaves a lot of the public confused or fed up about what's going on. And in fact, the root causes of pandemics and the solutions to prevent more are pretty clear, if not challenging. So Jane lent her voice to our campaign and is now going to also add her face. So let's listen first and watch for just a couple minutes what I'm talking about, then explain the wider campaign End Pandemics, the role of the upcoming Film Fest, and what's next with us, Jane, and our other partners. This first spot that we're showing you, 1 minute, ran on CNN and the internet, and on CNN alone reached over 750 million people. And it was produced, by the way, by AsiaWorks in partnership with Freeland and Be Grim. So if we can roll that first video.
We knew it was coming. The signs were all there. We knew we had to change, but we didn't. Destroying wild habitats, exploiting wildlife, turning a blind eye. Maybe it would go away. It didn't. It began to bite back. Primates had HIV, civets had SARS, bats and Ebola. COVID-19 is not the first pandemic, and it won't be the last, unless we deal with the root causes. It's time to stop the wildlife trade and to support compassionate, sustainable farming to protect our planet. Let's change our relationship with nature forever, for all life on Earth.
And if we can play the second video, which gives a little more detail about our campaign, End Pandemics. COVID-19 has changed our world. The way we live, our economy, our health systems, everything. COVID-19 will not be forgotten. To make sure that we never go through this again, we need to understand why it happened. COVID-19 and other zoonotic outbreaks were transmitted to people from wild animals that were taken from or pushed out of their natural environment. Some transmitted the virus directly to people, while others transmitted it through domesticated animals. And this is not the first time. SIV jumped from a primate to a human and became HIV. SARS jumped from a civet being sold on a menu. MERS from a camel. Bird flu jumped from wild birds. Ebola from bats. There are countless other viruses waiting to be unleashed if we don't change our relationship with nature. And the next outbreak could hit us much harder. Experts agree, rising wildlife trade, industrial farming, and dwindling wilderness have brought people into closer, unnatural contact with wild and captive-bred animals. We can prevent more pandemics by addressing their root causes, and that is exactly what our campaign, End Pandemics, is doing. End Pandemics has grown into a global campaign with over 70 organizations from every corner of the world. We are actively implementing a 4-part plan. We're training frontline protectors of nature across the globe. We are helping officers identify and stop trafficking of wild animals and their viruses across borders. We are helping impoverished communities adopt sustainable livelihoods. And we are educating youth and the public to stop buying and selling wild animals and to support the closing of commercial wildlife markets. And we are making progress. Lawmakers have invited us to help strengthen environmental regulations. Global media have transmitted our message to over 700 million people. And now corporations are starting to get involved, sponsoring us and sharing our message. The vaccine for COVID-19 may not work against the next virus. Stimulus packages will amount to expensive band-aids that need frequent changing if we do not address the root causes. Join us. With your support, we can prevent pandemics because our lives and economies depend on it. Thank you. So, So no matter which theory one subscribes to about, what's the origin of COVID-19 and all these variants, whether it's that it came from a wild animal or animal section of a wet market, or from a farm that farmed wild or exotic animals, or leaked from a lab. Any of those theories point to the same common denominator, which is it's still zoonotic. It jumped from an animal to a person. And we know from history that there are main drivers of zoonotic outbreaks. One is, as the video showed, destruction of wild habitat, which pushes wild animals into closer contact with farms or people or both, and they can shed those viruses for which we have no immune response. Or the other efficient way is wildlife trade, which pulls those wild animals into closer contact with people in market areas, et cetera. We can take them home. And we know that the solutions, therefore, are protect nature, protect wild habitat. And the tough thing to do with all the money being made, but we think it's the safest, is to end the commercial trade in wild animals and adopt sustainable, compassionate ways to produce our food. So these drivers and solutions are really what the films in next week's Film Fest speak to from all over the world. I'll let Molly, our producer, speak about that in just a second. But this is also what Jane and other influencers are helping us communicate. And I'm happy to report that we're going to shoot another public service announcement here in Thailand with Jane, which will be released this year in 2022. Again, produced with AsiaWorks. But we could not have sustained this global campaign, picked up the traction we have. We went from 10 organizations now to 81, or gotten word out without the sincere and steadfast support of the Thailand-based multinational company Be Grim, whose chairman, Harold Link, is with us today. Chairman Link and his company, like Jane, walk the talk for wildlife, nature, and people. Harold personally has also been helping us spread the word about the need to prevent future pandemics while the whole world still is chasing up vaccines and how do we get ahead of the different variants, helping us move the conversation forward to get ahead and to prevent future pandemics by speaking to circles that frankly we don't have access to. And he's been instrumental in linking us with key corporate and government influencers. Harold, would you like to say anything?
Thank you very much. I admire Steve a lot, and of course Jane, who I think we all do. And congratulations, Molly, that you will have a film festival now after having made your own movies of films. Thank you very much for having me here. You are, of course, of utmost importance in spreading. You are, of course, of utmost importance in spreading any news. And we talk a lot about COVID. We don't talk about the other diseases anymore. I'm a horse lover. I ride a lot. And we had the most terrible disease come to Thailand through wildlife trade. Somebody imported a few hundred zebras, and they brought with them the African horse sickness. Compared to African horse sickness, COVID is really nothing. In the last 2 years, about 1 million Thai people have died, but only 20,000+ from COVID. If a horse is infected by the African horse sickness, within 2 days, 95% are dead. So we had to put a great effort to save the horses that were still alive. And I think all these things that can really easily happen. So COVID is a very light disease. And if you look up the responses of all the governments all over the world, and that probably all countries are half bankrupt from the response. I think if we can do anything to stop these pandemics from coming, I think it will be so much worth all our time, and we can live a much better life. So we're trying really to convince people all over the world to end pandemics, and you have seen this spot we had on CNN. So this is of course only happening during 1 year, and it's difficult to sustain that over time. So we really need the help of all the correspondents of this world to bring the message. And what is also important is to keep the wildlife where it is and to help them to be there. So since many years we support the saving of the tigers in Thailand and partly in Malaysia. If you have ever looked at the YouTube clips of bringing back the wolves into Yellowstone Park, you will see how great it is if you bring the top of the food chain back into a place where they have disappeared. And it makes you realize how important it is to keep the tigers in Thailand alive and going. So I hope that you all will support all these good causes of stopping wildlife trade, ending pandemics, and please support also the tiger and general wildlife protection in Thailand and neighboring countries. So I'm very grateful that I finally met Jane, who's such a champion all over the world. And I just saw she's in the trending app. She's #1 today. So trending now. Jane, #1. So maybe Molly will soon follow of being up and trending. But I would like to thank you all so much that you include me and that we can support each other to try to end the wildlife pandemic. And I'd like to ask you to excuse me because I have the Vietnamese ambassador come to our house. And the Vietnamese are of course very great in poaching wildlife. And I hope he will also help us to stop that part. So I wish you all a wonderful evening and great success. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harold.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming over and joining us during your busy schedule and for your steadfast support. Before we go to Jane, I want to next introduce the producer of the Film Fest. By the way, I'm sure you saw, but out front you've got programs explaining the Film Fest, which will be a hybrid here and virtual. But Molly Farrell, who is our film producer here, National Geographic explorer. She's got her own following. Molly is a filmmaker, a storyteller. She's behind the camera, in front of it, all over the world, based in Mexico now, but moves all over the place. And I'll tell you, she pretty much, normally for a film festival like this, you would have 10 people running around, and she did the work of 10 people. So I first want to say thank you, Molly, and please tell us more about this film fest.
Thanks, Steve. Well, I would love to start by showing the promo video for the film festival, if you don't mind putting that on, so you can all get excited before you hear me talk.
I don't want to be the last chief to enjoy all this.
So thank you guys so much for being here. It's a real honor to be producing the festival this year. I feel very strongly about the impact that we'll be able to have through these films. You know, as a filmmaker, I'm constantly checking in with myself and asking myself, what is the importance of telling these stories through film? Why film? These days we're flooded with facts and figures about what's happening on our planet. And the pandemic has proved more than ever that the availability of trustworthy information is very important. But we've also seen the crucial importance of the narrative that surrounds that information. Facts are crucial to informing our decisions, but in order to catalyze action that can be part of a productive solution to global issues like wildlife trade, human trafficking, or a global pandemic, these facts have to be paired with effective communication. It's easiest to inspire positive action if an issue feels real and personal to us and really reaches our hearts. And for me, good storytelling that combines facts with insight into the core of an issue, like the storytelling in a good film, has that power to touch our hearts. Jane certainly knows something about that, and we're so lucky to have her support in amplifying our festival's message. This year, our screening committee has chosen 20 films from across the globe to share with you here at the FCCT and on our online platform, Eventive, from January 13th to 15th. Our festival theme for this year is A Better World Beyond Pandemics. We'll mainly be featuring stories that explain the drivers of pandemics and illuminate the root causes of zoonotic outbreaks, like wildlife trafficking and the destruction of nature. Many will help us learn how to prevent pandemics in the future. From films addressing the central issues of the pandemic, like our opening night film, A Grain of Sand in the Machine, to films highlighting international wildlife trade issues, like the feature film Tigre Gente, to the many films that will open our eyes to how these themes all connect with each other. We've prepared an incredible lineup for you, along with inspiring Q&As, and panel discussions on topics like regenerative agriculture, how to create impact through films, and what we now know about the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Steve will be moderating that discussion. It'll be very interesting. So the all-access passes to the virtual festival can be purchased online for $25 US, and those passes can also be used for entry to all of the events here at the FCCT, the screenings and the panel discussions that'll take place here. And if you'd only like to attend the festival in person here, then the entry will be 200 Thai baht for access to our entire program for that day. And each day we just have an incredible lineup. We have feature films, we have shorts programs, we have medium length films, and in between we'll have these great discussions and talks with the filmmakers, talks with experts on these different topics that'll be discussed in the films, and I think it's going to be a really, really interesting and inspiring event. So we're looking forward to seeing you next week, and please feel free to ask me any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Molly. Yeah, and do stick around because there may be a few questions about that. Okay, so I've already introduced Jane, but I just want to add one more thing, which is she and her family, some who are here now, Katie and Johnny, but also others who've just gone home. I just want to thank for you going through the headache and the process of getting over here to Thailand and dodging the virus so far. Knock on wood, they've been getting tested every day, all of us. We're down in Phuket, but they didn't just go on holiday. We had an event down there. Freeland and Open Hearts made a donation to victims of COVID down in Phuket with the local government down there. And there's other activities that we're involved in before they go home. So this is a wonderful family. And just thank you for doing what most people wouldn't do, and thank you also for going with us into the jungle in the next couple of days to make another commercial. So, Jane, over to you.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, Steve, for meeting me in Aspen. And when I was there with Katie and Johnny, both of whom are here today, and we were put in a room to see if we could, with some other people, come up with solutions to the world's problems and save the world. We didn't at that time know we were going to have COVID and everything that was related to your expertise. We were incredibly impressed with you, and we stayed in touch with you, and my daughter Katie had an idea that we spawned there, which was how to manage to get all the young people that wanted to volunteer to help them find where they could use their abilities, their unique talents, and connect with organizations that actually wanted volunteers. Thanks to you, we worked on that. We called it Young Hearts. It's part of our Open Hearts Foundation. We really feel that once we get past these pandemics, and which hopefully we will do with what we're doing here, that we will be able to harness this extraordinary global community of people that actually want to help one another. As an actress, I have the privilege of playing characters, and I get to sometimes play real people and sometimes imagined, but every time I do, I'm taken into another world. And I love what I do, because what my job is to bring the words with film and to actually get an emotional response out of the audience. That is what I'm doing for all of you. I'm hoping to do. That's we did that little piece that we did that went to CNN. Steve asked me to do that voiceover in the middle of pandemic when I was in Spain in a hotel that was pretty much closed down, and my son Johnny, who's a musician, happened to be there with the right mic, and we built like a whole bunch of pillows and bedding, and it was hilarious. We built an igloo, and I climbed in, and he peeked through the window and said, "Okay, Mom." So no studio. So it doesn't matter what it is. When Steve calls and says, "Can you do this?" I'll be there. And the reason is he is the real deal. He is really making a difference. I've just had the privilege of spending time with what's that organization that the anti-corruption.
Yeah, Jane went and visited the anti-money laundering organization yesterday.
I did, and hung out with them today. We like to call those girls the James Bond girls, because they really are. They're all lawyers, of course. They're all brilliant. And it's wonderful, because I spoke to them. I said, how does this work? And they said, well, we do a lot of the work, but if it wasn't for Freeland, we wouldn't know we wouldn't know where to look. They do all this work, and they bring it to us, and then we know what we need to do. And so they work as a team. So I am part of a team. I had the privilege of meeting Harold at his home last night. We had wonderful conversations about what we can all do together. I fully support what he wants to do with tigers. I think it's really important. I watched that piece, if you haven't seen it on YouTube, about how they reintroduced the wolves in Yellowstone and how it impacted everything about nature in that world. We have to respect Mother Nature. We have to give Mother Nature her power back. And we can do that. We took from it, and now we need to give it back. And I think, my job as a communicator is the privilege of speaking to people like you. We just did attempted a live Instagram. And if I have to wear a bathing suit on a beach in Bangkok and kiss an elephant to get people to hear the amazing things I'm doing with Freeland and how magnificent and wonderful Thailand is, I'm perfectly happy to do that. So thank you very much. I'm thrilled that we got to come here. A lot of our friends said, "You can't go to Thailand. How can you do that? That's too dangerous." Well, currently in Los Angeles, everyone I know has COVID. I think it's 1 in 6. So I'm actually thinking that going home is really dangerous, but I have to go to work on Monday. What can I tell you? So I'm going to have a lot of fun. We're going to shoot in the national park, and we just have to stay COVID clear until then. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to this great photo exhibit, does anybody have any questions for Jane or Molly? Yes, Dr. Eric. And you can take the mic there and ideally tell us who you are. And yeah.
Steve, I just wanted to say, because I'm an infectious disease doctor, and I was on the front line for HIV in Los Angeles all through the 90s. I was working in Africa doing HIV care during the 2000s for the Clintons. I was in the Ebola epidemic on the front line in Africa for 4 months in 2015, and now I'm treating patients with COVID all over the world, telemedicine and in person. And I am shocked and ashamed that through every one of these epidemics for the last 20-something years, not once did we ever consider thinking about the animals or the sources. The most we ever thought about it was, okay, yeah, this comes from a bat, this comes from, from the bats, from the sources, from the monkeys, but never once have I known any clinicians who have ever made that connection. And like I said, I'm ashamed to have been involved in it that much and to see the disconnect between the clinical side of it, the political side of it, and nobody reaching and crossing over to the animal side. And thank you for opening my eyes up to it. And if there's anything I can do to help, all you have to do is ask.
Thank you.
And Jane, thank you so much for being involved with this. It's so nice.
Thank you, Dr. Eric Fleischman, who's based here in Bangkok. Yeah, we've been just flabbergasted, and then we've realized it's a communication challenge, that we've got to speak about it, because even meeting with the medical industry, they're largely in a reactive mode. I mean, it's been a horrible, we all know, journalists know better, but so we want to get ahead of that curve while taking care of the victims, of course. So thank you. Any other comments or questions? The floor is open. Yes, John.
My name is Philip Cornwell-Smith. I'm a member of the FCCT. You mentioned in the videos about the way that food animals are reared, and you've not mentioned that at all in the presentation from the speakers. How is that going to be impacted by this? How does that impact the spread of disease, and what can you do about it?
Can you was it about food? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes.
In the video, it mentioned battery farming and all
Yep.
kinds of intensive agriculture of animals, but that what can be done about that hasn't been covered in the comments so far.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of our campaign. We've got 4 pillars, and one of them is reform farming. Basically, looking at how we produce our food, and we'll be showing movies and having some panels next week that basically ask the question, do we really need mass industrial agriculture in order to curb poverty and feed the world? It's kind of a leading question. I mean, we believe no, and we want to debunk the myth that you need that kind of approach. And in fact, the way we grow food more organically, less fertilizer, et cetera, not only leads to cleaner food for people, but a better environment. But on top of that, with the animals, pigs, chickens, et cetera, that we're mass producing, clearly, if you've got, say, a bat, pushed out of its environment into an area like that, and it drops it onto one animal, one way or another, and they're in close proximity to another, it can spread like that. So I think, what I've learned, I'm not an emerging infectious disease expert. I'm a generalist in conservation and counter trafficking, but I've been amazed to learn that a lot of the diseases that we now know about were actually zoonotic, and they date back, all the way back to even leprosy. We all learn about that in movies and books, which they attribute possibly to the commercial trade and red squirrel skins back then. But to your point, we're definitely going to focus a lot on regenerative agriculture, which is what we're advocating for as part of the One Health approach. If there is an umbrella solution to this, it's not a silver bullet, but it's kind of the all-encompassing description of the approach. It's called One Health. And that's what we're encouraging governments and society to work on together. We're bringing practitioners and frontline projects to that, so we're not just talking about it, we're modeling it on how to protect people, animals, and ecosystems all at the same time. Because until now, it's all been stovepiped, siloed, and different agencies and organizations working on different things that, and that's how we get pandemics.
And I'll just add that the film festival itself, we have one panel discussion on that topic specifically, and then we have a couple of films that touch on regenerative agriculture and alternatives to intensive farming. So please come check them out.
But yeah, how we grow our food is super important to how we prevent pandemics going forward.
Absolutely.
Hugely.
I actually think that when people are enlightened, when they actually see how the chain of events happens, I don't think we've been educated enough. I don't think we really know enough about it. And once we do, and thanks to these films and thanks to these discussions and thanks to all of you, kind of dumbing it down, hopefully, so that it's not about numbers and figures, it's about choices. I think a lot of people will change the way they feel about food. And when people change the way they feel about food, then that'll change the money-making aspect of it, because we know people will start choosing something that's a healthier option.
Exactly. Any other comments? The floor is open. Any subject. We don't mind if you want to get off the topic of pandemics, or because we are going to go on to another topic here soon. But any other comments or questions for Jane, or for Molly, or about the campaign? Yes, ma'am. Is it possible for you to just take the mic just behind you? Thanks so much.
Thank you. You mentioned that your organization is modeling some of these responses, and I was wondering if you could maybe give an example of, is there some kind of champion or leading example that you could briefly share here? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, in fact, we have put together a roadmap, which we don't have here today. It's in different languages: Thai, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, German, all kinds of languages, which speaks to the strategic approach of One Health, but also some very specific examples, frontline model projects around the world on counter wildlife trafficking, nature protection, organic farming, and demand reduction, trying to get people to stop buying this. So there's so many examples, but just a few would be, we've got organic farms run by former poachers, for example, right here in Thailand, which has done both, it's helped reduce killing of animals in the Eastern Forest Complex, which is a World Heritage Site here, and has also reduced habitat destruction and improved healthier food. Organic mushrooms, mulberries, other things which can be grown on small plots of land and have high yields and help people get out of debt. Because we found that most of the reason that people were poaching, or at least being hired by trafficking syndicates, is they were in debt. So that's one example. Then other organizations on our alliance are also doing demand reduction programs in different countries, including mainland China, and part of that is also working with policymakers, doing largely what we're trying to do here, which is make the connection between, the potential spark of a pandemic from wildlife trade to markets, and working on laws, and so much more. Counter-poaching programs in Africa, South America. There's a program out of Colombia, one of our groups, which is, and these are frontline, inexpensive projects, which I like. They're right out there, trying to stop the trade in various primates, which can also be a source, as we know, of zoonotic outbreaks, or at least a vector. And they're out there trying to get people to stop buying and trading, and supporting enforcement at the same time. So it's a bit carrot and stick. But if you look at our website, endpandemics.earth, you will find a roadmap, and it lists in detail, like it's kind of like a catalog of frontline projects, and that's growing all the time. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, I should have mentioned that before. So, I think we've all been touched by this pandemic. I'm sure some of us here know people who have died, and at least have been sick, and it just doesn't seem like it's ever going to stop. And I know that, elderly people, but also children, those of us who have kids, some of you who have them in school, et cetera, have noticed, it's tough. And this is essentially Children's Week. I mean, this Saturday's Children's Day in Thailand. And thanks to my fellow board member, Anna Lee, sitting up front here, she keeps reminding us that, we need to keep the focus on children and not forget about them. And to Jane's point, go away from the statistics and remember, some of the faces and personalities in this. So I'm glad to see some kids game tonight. I think I see my daughter back there, who's with her back toward us, but 14 months old. But to this point also, we're very lucky that Katie Flynn, who happens to be Jane's daughter, a professional photographer, actress, and filmmaker herself, who came all this way and brought her photos of this exhibit that's on the wall here with a children focus. And if I can ask, can we get a microphone over to Katie, a mobile one preferably, so that she can stand up and speak to the exhibit? Yeah, that one would be fun. But let me introduce Katie Flynn, who shares a birthday with Anna Lee tomorrow. So before you get started, happy birthday, Katie.
Thank you very much. I take this off. Do I just?
You can, yeah, socially distant is okay. So.
Thank you. I'm incredibly honored and very humbled to be here and to be able to show my work for this event. And as Stephen said and my mom said, we met at a summit in Colorado, and you're my hero. And every time it's true. And every time I just feel like you've changed my life in a lot of ways on how I see the world and what I want to do. And so I'm really grateful to be here and be part of this. So thank you. So yes, as Steve was saying, it's the week of the child, and I, as a mother of two, have spent a lot of time, obviously, in the last couple years with my daughters as we've been in lockdown, all of us. And one of the things that I was just so blown away by and so inspired by was children's resilience in this. They're not responsible for this. They don't really understand what's going on. They don't know a time frame, but they have this connection somehow to their imaginations that I think we all can learn from. And a lot of that, that I've discovered with my daughters has been through their connection to nature, and that's what's fueled their imagination. And so not only can we learn from how resilient they are and how they're able to create really expansive worlds, even within these confines, they also need nature as that fuel and that inspiration to discover that part of themselves. That's where they feel fearless. That's where they connect to the wild in themselves. And so not only is it our responsibility to protect that world for them, it's also us protecting their imaginations. And so today, the photos I picked for the exhibit, or we all picked, are all of my daughters, and really telling a story in a way of just what that resilience is, and just a little bit of their magic, little moments in the magic of their imagination. So thank you for letting me be part of this. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Oops. Checked. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Katie. And I also want to give a shout out to Jeannie Hallisey, who helped with the exhibit. Thank you so much. It was tough doing all this stuff during the holiday with everybody, with breaks being taken in between. And I also want to give a shout out to Katie's brother, Johnny Keach, who's in the back there, who also braved the virus and will be hopefully joining us in the music in just a little bit. So, does anybody have any other questions or points that they've got, or do you have any other points that you want to make? These, let me clarify, are these photos for sale? If anybody wanted one?
Yes.
I didn't, they are.
I say yes. Yes.
Yes, say yes.
I know it was quite a.
We brought them halfway around the world, and I think it would be so wonderful if they stayed in this part of the world.
Take them home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, well. Okay, so if so people can buy these photos. They were framed here. I know you had them matted and fit for these frames. That was quite a discussion that we all had, and thankfully that all worked. It looks great. So, but I think, Katie, if I could ask you and your mother just to hang out a bit, because people might want to feel more comfortable, having a discussion. Obviously, carefully, socially distant, but I know some people came here tonight hoping to meet you and talk to you. So soon we're gonna strike up the piano, but why don't is there anything else from my FCCT colleagues that I've forgotten? No, we're good?
We're good.
Very thorough. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Feel free to hang about and mingle carefully with our masks on. And thank you for also confirming as you checked in today that, you've been vaccinated and tested. But let's still be careful and help yourself to some food and drink. Let's have a chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.